Hey guys, in this episode of Learn JavaScript, I'm going to be going over how to use arrays. Now, pretty much arrays are just groups of objects that we can use and access it that way. So if you're not, or if you don't want to create a giant list of different variables, we can just sort all in an array. It makes it a lot cleaner and a lot easier to have less code with this, and you can access them the same way you would access them anywhere else in any other variable. So I can show you how to create one real quick. We'll just go variable and then name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name mine my int array. And then since it's going to be an int array, we want to label it as an int, but then want to do that for the brackets. And pretty much this declares that it's an array. And once you have that, save it out, put it onto your object. You're going to want to declare how many objects are going to be in your array. So the max amount of objects you can put in here, and you can set that up through there. And then if you wanted to, you could type in the different int values into each one, and that's usually what I do for that. So there's different ways you can access this. If you want to display your an item like an int from this array, so we can do debug.log. And then pretty much we just want to type in my int array, and from here we can put in that with the brackets, and depending on which number this is, it'll coordinate with what's in here. So if it was something like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so this would be 5 objects in an array. Since arrays always start at 0, 0 is always going to be the first one, and this is just giving an example of how it kind of displays within the actual array itself. So pretty much 0 would be the first slot, and so when we do debug.log, this will be equal to 0. And now if you wanted to do it for something like variable my string, and make it a string. If I were to keep this as 0, but instead do my string array, whatever I have written in the very first slot is what's going to appear in the debug log. So if I had basically like hello or goodbye, if it was something like that, 0 slot, that would be 0 slot, and it would get plugged into here, which would be plugged pretty much into this whole thing. So what we're doing is we're just grabbing, array. So pretty much we're grabbing my string array, going through the list, and picking out the first object, which is 0, and that's what gets put into debug.log. So hello is going to be the only thing that prints in here. And so if we made this 1 instead, in our debug.log, it'll print goodbye, and so on and so forth. So in your inspector, just add what you want to the list and plug in your objects in there, and it should all appear correctly into the array. Now if you wanted to do something like, let's see here real quick, function start, and what we could do is create a simple for loop, and we can just do like variable I equals 0, and then let's see here, my string array.length. I forgot if this is supposed to be capitalized or not, because Notepad++ doesn't pop up with that stuff, so it's either capital or lowercase. And then we can do I++. So we'll copy this, paste that in there, and we will plug I into that location. So pretty much at the very start of our game, what will happen is it'll go through this for loop, and pretty much it'll keep going through the entire length of the array. So if you had 10 objects in your myString array, it'll loop through this 10 times. And once it gets to the very end, it'll stop. So each time it loops through, you can just imagine it going through the code. Okay, we're done. We'll go back up, and it just keeps looping through until I gets to the max length of this array. And each time it loops through, it does I++. So this variable gets changed to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, forever what the length is. And so pretty much it'll print everything in your array with this code right here. You can change this to whatever you want for whatever code. So for example, if you're using a GUI and you want to have a text object and print out pretty much everything in your array, you can do that through the text. So if you had a list of objects like in an inventory or something like that stored in here, but for inventory you'd probably want to use a list instead of an array, but we haven't really gone over lists yet. Probably cover that in the future. It's similar to an array, but it's just how it sounds. It's a list of objects, and it's pretty much the same, but it just can organize it a lot better. And when stuff gets deleted out of it or added to it, stuff moves up a slot, so it's pretty much staying within a list. But for an array, if you were to remove an object, it would keep that extra slot blank or whatever, and so that's kind of the difference between the two. But yeah, pretty much. So want to close that off. But yeah, that's a basic way to print one object out of your array, and how to create a for loop to print a list of what's in the array. Now, there's also another thing that you could do if you wanted. Trying to think. Actually, I'm going to go over that in a different tutorial. How to that might get a little more complex for this tutorial. But for people who are wondering what arrays were or how to use them, this is a basic tutorial. Hopefully I can finish up the JavaScript tutorials and make a few more, covering other techniques for programming and help you guys understand the code a lot better. Maybe I'll do some more mathematics-based tutorials in the future, but whatever you guys suggest, just leave them in the comments, and I'll try getting back to you guys on future tutorials.